وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ, and the messenger will say, when? On that day. Ya Rabbi, O my Lord, إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. Indeed, my people have taken this Qur'an as a thing abandoned. وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ, the messenger will say, there are two opinions about this. That first of all, the messenger will say on the Day of Judgment, complaining to Allah, witnessing against his people, that my people abandoned the Qur'an. And obviously, which messenger is this? Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Secondly, it is also said that وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ in the dunya, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said this while complaining to his Lord about his people. That inna qawmi, my people, and who does my people refer to? The Quraysh. They اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. They took this Qur'an as something that is forsaken, abandoned. Mahjur is from the root letters Hajim Ra. Hajr. Hijrah. What does it mean? What does it mean? To leave something, right? To immigrate, to give up, avoid. So mahjur is something that is abandoned, something that is deserted. So my people have taken this Qur'an as that which is to be shunned, that is to be disregarded. Matrukan bil kulliyya, they completely abandoned it. How? They turned away from it, they disbelieved in it, they didn't even bother looking at it, they didn't even bother reflecting on it. Secondly, the word mahjur is from hujr, with a dhamma on the ha. And what does hujr mean? Do you remember we did this earlier as well? Mustakbirina bihi samiran tahjurun. To speak ill about something, to speak negatively about something, inappropriate speech, fuhsh talk. And so what does it mean by this? That inna qawmi ittakhadhu hadha al-Qur'ana mahjura, that they have made this Qur'an as a mark of mockery. That they mock at it, they make fun of it. Some call it magic, others call it shi'r, they call it nonsense. So on the Day of Judgment, the Prophet ﷺ will witness against some people. And on the other hand, he will witness in favor of some people. Over here, what do we learn? That he will witness against some people. And the first people that he will witness against are who? The Quraysh, his own people. That I brought the Qur'an to them, but they shunned it. They disregarded it. They poked fun at it. They spoke evil about it. Now remember that when it comes to forsaking the Qur'an, when it comes to abandoning the Qur'an, there are different levels. There are different levels of abandoning the Qur'an. One is that a person completely abandons it, totally abandons it. He doesn't look at it, he doesn't believe in it, he doesn't read it, he doesn't pay any attention to it, he doesn't give any importance to it. This is what? Completely abandon the Qur'an. There is another level. What is that? That a person says that he believes in it, but he doesn't care to read it. He doesn't care to understand it. He doesn't care to implement it. He doesn't care to recite it. It's right there before him. He doesn't pay any attention to it. He will read many other things. He will read one email after the other. He will read one book after the other, one article after the other, one message after the other, one Facebook message after the other, one tweet after the other. But when it comes to the Qur'an, he will not read. You understand? Another level of abandoning the Qur'an is that a person reads it, but only at the level of recitation. He only focuses on the recitation. He doesn't care to reflect on the meaning. He doesn't care to study it. He doesn't care to understand it. He doesn't care to extract any lessons from it. He does not make it a furqan for himself. So this is also another level of abandoning the Qur'an. There is another level, that a person believes in it, he understands it, he studies it, he reads it. But after understanding, after reading, after reflecting, he leaves it. You understand? It's just like a person reads a particular book to give an exam. He studies it, studies every page of it, highlights it, makes a lot of notes, attends all the lectures, and then when he gives a test, when he gets a result, what happens? That's it. Put the book away, put it in recycling, donate it to the library, throw it away. This is what he does. Because that phase of his life is over. And if you ask him 5 years after he took the exam, so what was, one of the things that you studied in the book, tell me 5 things that you studied, he might not be able to recall. If you ask him about something that he actually wrote in his exam, he will not be able to recall. Why? He never revised it. This is another level of abandoning the Qur'an. That a person studies, a person reads, a person understands, he reflects. But after some time, he leaves the Qur'an. He leaves the Qur'an. We learn in Tafseer Al-Qurtubi, it is mentioned that Anas radiallahu anhu said, that the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever reads the Qur'an, and then he closes it, and he leaves it in his home, neither reciting it, nor reflecting on its commands. I'll repeat it. Whoever reads the Qur'an and then closes it and leaves it in his home, neither reciting it nor reflecting on its commands, then on the Day of Judgment, the Qur'an will be around his neck and it will complain to Allah, this slave of yours had left me. So judge between us. This slave of yours abandoned me, so judge between us. The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Qur'anu hujjatul laka aw alayka. Each and every one of us, as a Muslim, we have a relationship with the Qur'an. It might be strong, it might be weak. It might be that we spend a lot of time with the Qur'an, it might be that we don't spend a lot of time with the Qur'an. We have to see, what kind of a connection, what kind of a relationship do we have with the Qur'an? Is it very weak? Or do we really call it strong? Is it that we're just concerned about reading and writing and taking notes? Or are we concerned about reciting it in the morning, reciting it in the night, opening it up when we're lonely, opening it when we are alone, when we want an answer, when we're concerned, when we're confused, instead of talking to people, instead of sending long emails to them, do we open the Qur'an? Or do we do other things? So each and every one of us has to see, what kind of a relationship do we have with the Qur'an? The Prophet ﷺ said that the fasting and the Qur'an, as-sawm, as well as the Qur'an, they shall come as intercessors on the day of resurrection. The fast will say, "O my Lord, I prevented him from his food and drink during the day. I did not let him eat, I did not let him drink during the day." Why? He was fasting. So let me intercede for him. And the Qur'an will say, "I kept him from sleep during the night. So let me intercede for him." Then they will be allowed to intercede. But if a person does not recite the Qur'an, if a person does not study the Qur'an, then will the Qur'an come to intercede for him? Think about it. Sometimes when we have to do our homework, when we have to do the lesson 7 times, what happens? We feel so overwhelmed. We think, we have to spend so much time with the Qur'an, we don't get time to do other things. Isn't it? Think about it realistically. When you have to do your lesson, when you have to take your notes, when you have to read your notes, when you have to do your tajweed practice, when you have to memorize some ayat, what happens? It takes your time away from other things. Now sometimes we feel frustrated. This is not fair. This is too much work. But look at it this way. The more time you spend with the Qur'an, on the Day of Judgment, the Qur'an will come saying to Allah, "Oh Allah, I prevented him from going to his friends. I prevented him from talking on the phone. I prevented him from cooking a lot of meals. I prevented her from cleaning, every single day, keeping everything spick and span every single day. I prevented her from many, many things." Qur'an. So let me intercede for her. Let me intercede for him. Isn't this so honorable? Never feel sad then. Never feel lonely then. Never feel that your life has become so lonely and boring, that you have to spend so much time with the Qur'an. You don't have time for other things. You don't have time for other people. Because the more time you spend with the Qur'an, the more valuable it is. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا. And thus we have made for every prophet an enemy. From among who? مِنَ الْمُجْرِمِينَ. From among the criminals. وَكَفَى بِرَبِّكَ هَادِيًا وَنَصِيرًا. But sufficient is your Lord as a guide and helper. In the previous ayah, what do we learn? That the Prophet will complain on the Day of Judgment that these people, they abandoned the Qur'an. These people, they spoke ill of the Qur'an. So the people who speak ill of the Qur'an, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comforts the Prophet ﷺ that just as you have enemies, remember that وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا. For every prophet there were enemies. And who were those enemies? مِنَ الْمُجْرِمِينَ. From those who were guilty. But despite all their opposition, despite all their efforts, remember that وَكَفَى بِرَبِّكَ هَادِيًا وَنَصِيرًا. Your Lord is sufficient as a hadi and nasir. Hadi meaning one to guide you. He will guide you as to how you should overcome them. He will be your guide. And hadi also that He will guide people to you despite their opposition. That they can spread as many rumors as they want about you. They can spread as many objections as they want. But still Allah will guide people to you. وَنَصِيرًا, and He is your helper. He will give you victory over them. This mission will reach its completion. They cannot cause defeat. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, and the disbelievers say, لَوْلَا نُزِّلَ عَلَيْهِ الْقُرْآنُ جُمْلَةً وَاحِدَةً. Why was the Qur'an not revealed to him all at once? How come the Qur'an has not been revealed in one go like the previous scriptures? That the Torah, it was revealed, it was given to Musa a.s. at one go. He went for 40 nights, he came back with the Torah. The Injil, all the other books that were given in one go. But the Qur'an, how come it has not been given to him at once? How come today he receives one revelation, tomorrow he receives another, then after 5 days he receives another? What is this? Now why did the mushrikeen raise this objection? Because by saying this, they were trying to prove that Muhammad ﷺ is inventing the Qur'an. Because every other day he comes up with a new idea. He thinks hard, he researches, he talks to people, and then when he comes up with an idea, he comes up with a story, he comes and presents it to us as revelation. This is an evidence that this Qur'an is not from God. Because if it was from God, then it would come all at once. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that كَذَلِكَ, it is like that. What is like that? The revelation of the Qur'an has come gradually. Why? لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ, so that we can make firm by this revelation your heart. That when the Qur'an comes gradually to you, your heart becomes firm. What does it mean by that? Nuthabbita, from tasbeet, to stabilize, to fasten. And fu'ad is used for heart. And fa'ada literally means to sear meat on fire. To braise or to sear, to cook meat. Lahm al-fa'id is such meat that has been seared. And basically, it gives the meaning of heat. Isn't it so? When you have to sear meat, when you have to barbecue it, when you have to broil it, when you have to braise it, what do you need? A lot of heat. So fu'ad from the same root is used for a heart that is emotionally charged. A lot of emotions. Anger, fear, love, worry, concern. You understand? There is another word that is used for heart, qalb. But there is another word, fu'ad. Fu'ad is used for a heart that is full of emotions. So, لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. That for example, when your heart is burning, when your heart is not at rest because of the opposition of people, because of the criticism of people, you're angry, you're frustrated, you're sad, you're depressed, what happens? Revelation comes, eases your heart. There you're at comfort, you're at ease. It cools you. This is just like if you are thirsty and you drink water all at once in one go. At one go. At that time, okay, it will quench your thirst. But after some time, you'll feel upset. You'll feel sick. Isn't it so? Whereas if you drink sip after sip, then what happens? Every time you take a sip, it cools you. Isn't it so? Every time you take a sip, it reaches every part of your body, your head, your mind, and it cools you, it comforts you. Similarly, every time wahi comes, it was a source of comfort for the Prophet ﷺ. So, لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. And لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ has also been understood in another way. That fu'ad has been understood as your memorization. That we make your memorization and your understanding firm and solid. that if the Qur'an was revealed all at once, it would be very difficult for the Prophet ﷺ to memorize it. Because remember, he could not read. The other scriptures, they were written down. Like for example, the Torah, how was that given? How was that given? On the tablets, it was written down. But the Qur'an, it was delivered through oral communication. The Prophet ﷺ was to memorize it. If it was revealed all at once, he would not be able to memorize it. So لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. There's a wisdom behind the gradual revelation of the Qur'an. Now same thing with medicine. How do you consume it? Gradually. Isn't it so? You have to take the particular dose in the morning, in the evening, before going to bed. One dose one day, the other dose the other day. If you say, I want to get better quickly, I'll take the entire bottle at once, it will have a poisonous effect on your body. Isn't it so? But what do you have to do in order for the medication to work? You have to take the medication in doses, one part after the other, for it to be effective. And this is how the Qur'an was also effective. Just the other day I was having a discussion with someone, that there are people who when they start studying the Qur'an, they want to complete it, they want to finish it. And there's a particular course going on in which there are classes only once a week. So when the people were told, it will take 14 years for you to complete the course. I said, 14 years? Oh my God. We want to complete it, we want to finish it. You see, when you have that mentality that you want to finish it, you want to complete it, then you don't benefit as much. But if you have that mentality that I want to absorb it, I want to internalize it, I want to understand it, then what happens? You take it gradually. You don't think that this time when you're studying the Qur'an, this is the only time. This is not the only time. If you want to benefit from the Qur'an, you have to continuously learn it. Continuously. Because I see some people getting frustrated, that if they don't get 90% on their test, if they don't get to do their lesson 7 times because of some genuine reason, they get frustrated. They say, okay, fine, I'm going to quit. This is not for me. This is too difficult for me. Understand, realize, this is not the only time you're studying the Qur'an. Yes, you should give it your best, because the Qur'an deserves that you give it its haqq. However, you also have to see what is within your capacity. This is not the only time. This is a lifelong process. Believe me, every time you study the Qur'an, you will learn something. It will benefit you. It will comfort your heart. The Prophet ﷺ was not given the Qur'an in one go. 23 years. And how much time do we want to give? Less than 23 months. We want to give only 18 months. Obviously there's going to be a difference. Isn't it so? So, to truly grasp the Qur'an, to truly benefit from the Qur'an, a person has to give time. And right now when you're studying the Qur'an, you might feel that you're not being able to give time. But remember, this is not the only time. This is just the beginning. This is just an overview of the Qur'an. This is just one time you're going through the Qur'an. As you go through life, you will go through the Qur'an again and again. You can never leave it. You can never be of those that the Prophet will say on the Day of Judgment, إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا, that you study the Qur'an, you leave it. No, this is a lifelong thing now. You can never abandon it. So, there's great wisdom behind the gradual revelation of the Qur'an, gradual study of the Qur'an, that a person is comforted by it, he is put at ease, he receives guidance, and he understands better. He learns better, he memorizes better. وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا, and we have spaced it distinctly. Meaning in its revelation, we have spaced it distinctly. رَتَّلَ يُرَتِّلُ تَرْتِيل, ra, ta, lam. Ratila means to be in a good order. When something is ordered, well, when it's even. Like for example, if you have books, and you put them on a shelf. One is that you put one book here, another book there, another book up there, another book down there. This is not a good order. Or for example, you put a big book here and a very small book right next to it, another big book next to it. Is that a good order? No. How should you arrange books? In an orderly fashion, so that when you look at it, it looks nice. So ratila is what? When something is in a good order. Even. And then it's also used for the beauty of something. Because when something is ordered properly, when something is put in a good order, it looks beautiful. Isn't it so? From this is ratlul kalam, ratl of kalam, of speech. What does it mean? That a person puts together the components of speech and he arranges them very nicely. You understand? Like for example, if you're writing something, if you're writing an email, if you're writing an article, if you're writing a long answer to a question, one is that you haphazardly put down everything that's in your mind. But the other is what? That you arrange the sentences properly, you arrange the words properly, you arrange your thoughts properly. So ratlul kalam is to put together the components of speech in a very nice manner. And when it comes to speaking, when it comes to kalam that is verbal, then what does it mean? That a person pronounces the words in a clear fashion. Each word is distinct from the other. And the kalam is such that wherever a person needs to emphasize, the emphasis is visible. And wherever there's no need to emphasize as much, there's no unnecessary takalluf, tasannur, that the kalam seems to be so heavy. You understand? So, tartil is also of Qur'an. Isn't it so? وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. What does it mean then? That a person recites in a way that each word is clear, each letter is clear. Sometimes when we're reciting, we eat up certain letters. We eat up certain harakat, the mad, the alif, the waw, right? We don't give it its haqq. It disappears, and the other person who's listening to you, they say, where did that letter go? Where did that harakah go? And only someone who's good at tajweed can point out those mistakes. So tartil is that when a person recites the Qur'an, he recites in a way that each letter, each harakah, each harf, each word is distinct. It's clear. And it's read in a way that a person pauses at the appropriate places. That a person stops at the appropriate places and he picks up from the appropriate place. And then he raises the voice at an appropriate place. And he lowers his voice at an appropriate place. So, رَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا, what does it mean over here? That we have arranged it distinctly. We have gradually recited it over 23 years. We have spaced it distinctly. That each revelation that has come has been spaced out from the other for a genuine reason, for a good reason. That it's not that randomly Surah Al-Ahzab was revealed. No. There was a particular reason, a particular incident. And then in the light of that, some ayat were revealed. And in the light of another incident, other ayat were revealed. So this distinction, this separation in the revelation, there's great wisdom behind that. وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. We have spaced it out distinctly. Similarly, when a person continues to study the Qur'an, then what happens? This is how he benefits. That he's going through something in life, and when he opens up the Qur'an, there are so many answers that he finds. So much guidance that he finds. When will that be? When a person continuously studies the Qur'an. When he doesn't think that this is only for 18 months. No. This is for 23 years. More than 23 years. Lifelong. وَلَا يَأْتُونَكَ بِمَثَلٍ. And they do not come to you with an argument. Mathal? Mathal means example. And over here, example gives a sense of any example, any description to invalidate your mission, to raise an objection. So any objection, any argument, any unique argument they come up with, what happens? إِلَّا جِئْنَاكَ بِالْحَقِّ. Except that we come to you with the truth. Meaning we send the truth which refutes their objection. If you look at it in the surah so far, so many objections against the Prophet ﷺ, against the Qur'an have been mentioned. Each of those objections seem to be very unique, seem to make a lot of sense, seem to, really make you doubtful, make you question. But what happens? They come up with this mathal, with this exemplary, with this very unique question, objection. But what happens? إِلَّا جِئْنَاكَ بِالْحَقِّ. We come to you with the truth. وَأَحْسَنَ تَفْسِيرًا. And most beautiful explanation. We bring the truth and we give the most beautiful explanation which removes doubts, which clarifies the truth. Tafseer is from the root letters Fa, Sin, Ra. Fassara yufassiru, tafseer is to open up something that is hidden. To expound, to expose, to interpret, to comment. That something that is hidden, you reveal it, you expose it. So, they raise an objection, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends an explanation, which puts an end to their dispute. So whenever they say anything in an attempt to oppose the truth, we respond to them with the truth. We respond to them with the better argument, with the better explanation. But who are those people who raise such objections against the Qur'an? They're الَّذِينَ يُحْشَرُونَ عَلَى وُجُوهِهِمْ. They're those people who will be gathered on their faces, إِلَى جَهَنَّمَ, to hellfire. Those people who raise objections against the Qur'an, against the messenger, what's going to be their end? What's going to be their end? They will be raised, they will be dragged on their faces to hellfire. أُولَٰئِكَ شَرٌّ مَكَانًا. Such people are worst in position, وَأَضَلُّ سَبِيلًا, and more astray in way. Whose punishment is described over here? People who object to the truth. Who try to find faults in the Qur'an. Normally when people have this attitude, they have the audacity to raise objections against the Qur'an, we get very intimidated. Isn't it? We feel they're so intellectual, they're so clever, they're so intelligent, and oh my God, they're saying this, I don't have an answer to this, I don't know how to explain this, maybe they're right, what can we say? But what do we learn? That when a person raises an objection against the Qur'an, this is not something small. This is something very serious. That such a person will be utterly humiliated in the hereafter. How? That on the Day of Judgment, يُحْشَرُونَ عَلَى وُجُوهِهِمْ, they will be raised up on their faces. Hashr is what? Gather together. So when people will be gathered on the Day of Judgment, how will these people be? On their faces. Why? Because they use their faces to speak against the Qur'an. And how is the pride of a person reflected, the arrogance of a person? From his face. So they had a lot of pride, and that pride will be disgraced on the Day of Judgment. In Surah Al-Naml, ayah 90, we learn, وَمَنْ جَاءَ بِالسَّيِّئَةِ فَكُبَّتْ وُجُوهُهُمْ فِي النَّارِ. And whoever comes with an evil deed, their faces will be overturned into the fire. In Surah Al-Qamar, ayah 48, we learn, يَوْمَ يُسْحَبُونَ فِي النَّارِ عَلَى وُجُوهِهِمْ ذُوقُوا مَسَّ سَقَرٍ. The day they are dragged into the fire on their faces, and it will be said, taste the touch of saqar, of burning. So repeatedly we see this in the Qur'an, that those people who stand up arrogantly against Allah, against His Messenger, against His book, such people will be humiliated. They will be humiliated. And part of standing up against the Qur'an, speaking evil about the Qur'an, abandoning the Qur'an, through one's behavior, a person shows he doesn't need the Qur'an. Through one's lifestyle, a person shows he doesn't need to refer to the Qur'an. That he studies the Qur'an but he abandons it. He reads the Qur'an and then he leaves it. He learns it but he does not implement it. A person who is like this, even he will be humiliated on the Day of Judgment. In Surah Taha, ayah 124 to 126, we learn, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى. The one who turns away from the Qur'an, he will be raised up blind on the Day of Judgment. قَالَ رَبِّي لِمَ حَشَرْتَنِي أَعْمَى. He will say, oh my Lord, why did you raise me blind? وَقَدْ كُنْتُ بَصِيرًا, I could see. قَالَ كَذَلِكَ أَتَتْكَ آيَاتُنَا فَنَسِيتَهَا. My ayat came to you, but you forgot them. وَكَذَلِكَ الْيَوْمَ تُنْسَى. And thus, you will also be forgotten today. So what do we learn? In all of these ayat that we have studied today and yesterday, what do we learn? That the Qur'an has a haqq. The Qur'an is Furqan. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not just send it that we appreciate its words. We beautify our voices with its recitation. And we gain praise because of some degrees that we have learned of this Qur'an. No. This Qur'an has been sent as a Furqan, as a guide, as something to implement in our lives. And if we study, we learn, but we don't implement, then this is going to be very detrimental for us. If we abandon this Qur'an, and we choose the friendship of those people who take us away from the Qur'an, again this will be a source of great regret. And a person who dares to speak up against the Qur'an, insult the Qur'an, such a person will be insulted. Because Allah Himself defends His book. Whether we try to defend it or not, He will defend His book. Whether we try to live up to it or not, His book is still honorable. So whether we abandon or we live by it, whether we abandon the Qur'an or live by it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself will raise the Qur'an. He will elevate the Qur'an because it is His words. It is from the one who created everything, the one who is sublime. So if we live by the Qur'an, if we give time to the Qur'an, if we give its haqq, we are the ones who benefit. And how much time should a person spend with the Qur'an? How much time should he dedicate to the Qur'an? A few hours? A few years? A few months? No. This is a lifelong thing. A lifelong thing. Once you've begun your journey with the Qur'an, it doesn't come to an end. And every moment spent with the Qur'an is an investment. Because the Qur'an will be the companion in the grave, and it will come interceding for its people on the Day of Judgment. We listen to the recitation. Sometimes when a person is even studying the Qur'an, he has such friends who distract him from what is more important, making him feel negative, making him feel it's not that important to do the work, spreading negative feelings about the people who are teaching the Qur'an. And what happens then? Such friends, أَضَلَّنِي عَنِ الذِّكْرِ بَعْدَ إِذْ جَاءَنِي. The Qur'an is right in front of me, still I cannot benefit from it because of this negativity that is put in your heart, in your mind, that is instilled. It's bad influence. Do yourself a favor, do your friends a favor. When they talk negative, when they spread this negativity, don't let them talk, as we learned in Surah An-Nur. That when there is anything negative being spoken about, we cannot let it go. We have to speak up against it. Because when the Qur'an is being learned, when the Qur'an is being taught, then how can we feel negative and how can we spread negativity? Remember that every person goes through challenges and difficulties. Every single person. Especially when you study the Qur'an, you will face challenges. What did we learn? وَجَعَلْنَا بَعْضَكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ فِتْنَةً. أَتَصْبِرُونَ or not? Are you going to have sabr or not? If you don't do sabr, you're going to suffer. There's one more thing that I felt during the recitation, that وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّ إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. If you just think about how much pain the Prophet ﷺ would experience when he received the revelation. That if he was on a camel, the camel would sit down. If it was winter, he would start sweating. If his knee was on somebody else's knee, they would feel their knee is going to break. Imagine the pain, imagine the heaviness that he experienced on receiving the Qur'an. And imagine the struggle that he went through in delivering the Qur'an. He recited the Qur'an so much to the point that his feet would swell. Abu Bakr, when he recited the Qur'an, he was beaten up. So many companions, when they recited the Qur'an, they were beaten up to the point of death. And here we have the Qur'an right before us. Right before us. But what is our behavior? Mahjur? We are leaving it? We are abandoning it? Is it fair? Just imagine, the Prophet ﷺ will complain, إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. They left it. Imagine you go through so much struggle to make something, to prepare something, to deliver something. And the other person, he doesn't care. He doesn't even look at it. And that struggle was for 23 years. 23. Not 2, not 1, 23 years. That's like an entire lifetime. And the Qur'an is before us. But we don't listen, we don't read, we don't study, we don't reflect, we don't implement. We abandon it. This is not fair. This is ingratitude. Despite the opposition and difficulty that he was facing in delivering the Qur'an, he still did it. He still did it. But when we are going through the Qur'an, if we face a bit of difficulty, if we face a little bit of challenges, then we begin to threat other people. We're not coming. We're not doing this. We're not going to cooperate. This is not right. Just imagine the struggles that the Prophet ﷺ went through. They're much more than the struggles that we are going through. He went through hunger. He went through boycott. He went through hijrah. He went through days of hunger. He went through the Share of Abi Talib. He went through the battle of Khandaq. He went through Tabuk. He went through Badr and Uhud. He lost his family. He lost his friends for the sake of the Qur'an. And if we just get a headache, if we just get a bad mark, if we just get some reminders, we get so annoyed, we begin to threaten other people. Who is going to suffer ultimately? We. Because always remember, whenever you're doing something with the Qur'an, you are doing a favor only to yourself, not to anybody else. It's a favor to yourself. Therefore, don't threaten other people. Don't tell other people you're going to leave and you're not going to do what you're supposed to do. Because you're going to suffer. Nobody's benefiting. Nobody's making money. Nobody's family business is prospering because of your coming and you're studying the Qur'an. No, you are benefiting. Therefore, do yourself a favor and keep with this. Hold on to it. Do sabr. And just remember, life is difficult. Write this down. I remember my mother had this written down. Life is difficult. Accept it. Accept it. It's difficult. When children go to school, they spend so many years, JK, SK, then all the way to high school, and then they go to university, and then they're able to apply that knowledge somewhere. Isn't it so? Similarly, when we are studying the Qur'an, this is the first time we're doing it, then remember that this is just the beginning. This is just JK, this is just SK. And there are many, many years up ahead. A lot of things to learn. A lot of things to practice. So when you find it difficult, just remember, this is just the beginning. It will get easier. Inshallah. We'll listen to the recitation of these ayat.
ويوم يعض الظالم على يديه ويوم يعض الظالم على يديه يقول يا ليتني اتخذت مع الرسول سبيلا يا ويلتى ليتني لم أتخذ فلانا خليلا ويوم يعض الظالم على يديه يقول يا ليتني اتخذت مع الرسول سبيلا يا ويلتى ليتني لم أتخذ فلانا خليلا لقد أضلني عن الذكر بعد إذ جاءني وكان الشيطان للإنسان خذولا وقال الرسول يا رب إن قوم اتخذوا هذا القرآن مهجورا وكذلك جعلنا لكل نبي عدوا من المجرمين وكفى بربك هاديا ونصيرا وقال الذين كفروا لولا نزل عليه القرآن جملة واحدة كذلك لنثبت به فؤادك ورتلناه ترتيلا ولا يأتونك بمثل إلا جئناك بالحق وأحسن تفسيرا الذين يحشرون على وجوههم إلى جهنم أولئك شر مكانا وأضل سبيلا
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.